Hello everybody, my name is Taylor Arndt, and if you're new to my channel, I create videos all about connecting technology to lifestyle and everything else in between. In today's tutorial for the second day of 30 Days of Python, we are going to be talking about the interactive Python shell. Last night, we went ahead and we installed Python, and I saw that I had about 4 or 5 of you that commented and said you guys did it, so congratulations. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about our next steps. The interactive Python shell is a great way to get started with Python without actually writing much code. We're just kind of writing it in a little test prompt. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how I use the Python shell. Now, recall that yesterday when I said to type Python, it said greater, right? That's called the interactive shell in the interpreter. Basically, you can put a bunch of lines of code in there and you can test it out. And we're going to be talking about the ways that I test out code that maybe I'm not sure about, or maybe I want to get help with something or things like that. So I'm going to open up my command prompt. Okay. I'm just going to type in Python, and you'll hear it says greater, or you'll see it. Okay. Now basically it says greater. So we can accept input. Now, here is your first little Python task, okay? Pay attention, because I'm going to have you guys do some homework. I know, but it's going to be a fun time. All right. So the first thing I want you to do is try to type some commands. So I'm going to be teaching you guys some Python tonight. That's right. You guys are getting into Python tonight. And I am going to show you one command. If you're a Python expert, you probably know where I'm going with this. Print, left parenthesis, quote, hello world, right parentheses. What does that do? Let's break it down. Print something to the screen. And hello world is what it's printing to the screen. Hello world is what's called a string. So its string is in quotes, and it is always being printed to the screen when you do print, okay? So if you do print left parenthesis hello world, it will say hello world in the output, or even if you run it from your text editor, which, by the way, we are going to be doing very shortly, okay? So it's very important to understand that you could type, for example, print hello world, and it will say hello world. Watch this. So print left parenthesis, quote, hello, quote, oops, right parenthesis. Hello world, greater. Remember, this runs at every line, okay? So every line of output is being read in this little prompter, okay? And so we just typed in hello world, okay? But what if we wanted to say name equals Taylor? Well, what is name equals Taylor? Name equals Taylor is what's called a variable. And a variable is simply a bucket where you can put different kinds of data. For example, variables, strings, booleans, and other types of variables like floats and doubles and things. It all depends on the programming language. So if you do name equals Taylor, that's a variable, and Python will store that until it's going to need to be used. So let's explore that together. So type your name. I'm just going to type Taylor because that's my name. So name equals. Now I put a quotation mark. You know why, right? Because it's a string. I put a quotation mark here. Taylor. Great. It's a greater. You notice it didn't report anything, right? It didn't say anything because the thing is, it is not returning anything. It is just storing something, okay? But watch this. If I do print left parenthesis name, it will print out Taylor. So print left parenthesis name, right parenthesis. See? Well, let's say I mistyped something. And let's say, I don't know, I did print left parenthesis or something. Well, I'm going to introduce you guys to errors, okay? Errors are the bane of my existence as a programmer. Look, I've been programming in Python pretty much the entire day today for work, and I was working on this application to send push notifications to our apps for OneSignal, and I had a huge error with my code. But I had to try to do what's called debugging. And debugging is basically where you try to figure out your errors, okay? So watch this. I'm going to say print, left parenthesis, quote. Actually, let's do it this way. Okay, but what if I don't end my quotes? Uh-oh. Unterminated string literal. I know that sounds like a big thing. You're thinking, oh my gosh, I just ruined myself. No, you didn't ruin yourself. Your computer's still alive. You just happened to forget to close your quotation marks. So watch this. Print. The parenthesis. Hello world. See? You just have to think about your quotation marks. Okay. So if all this sounds like confusing gibberish and you're thinking, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, let's simplify things a little bit more. Variables, buckets for storing data. Great, you understand that. There are many different types of buckets. If you're going to a yarn shop, I love knitting and crafting, and let's say I have different colors of yarn, right? They're in different buckets, actually, literally, okay? It's kind of the same thing with variables. Variables are in different buckets based on the type of the variable. And so that is very important to keep in mind, is that a string or an integer or things like that are in different buckets. No, I am not going to make you do a whole bunch of math like the traditional computer science professors do, because I know when we start getting into integers, people are thinking, oh my gosh, I got to do math and I hate math. I know. Guess what? I do too. I know, right? So I am not your traditional computer science professor. I'm not even a computer science professor at all. What I'm saying is you do not have to do all of this math stuff to learn Python. If you don't know anything about me, my philosophy with this whole Python thing is I'm going to be finding projects to help automate my life and to help automate your life using the skills that you learn in my Python class. Okay? And we're going to be doing practical projects together, so just keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and get some things going. And guess what? You just got introduced to your first practical project. Congratulations. On Thursday, after the Visual Studio Code tutorial, we're making a calculator. What? But I don't know how to make a calculator. I don't know what I'm doing. Don't worry, because here's the thing. It's going to be the most simple calculator you've ever seen in your life. If you just follow along with my commands. And you're going to be learning more about variables. You're going to be learning more about all the different things that make up a Python program. And what better way to start off with a simple calculator? But anyways, let's get back to the program. Okay, so I have all this code here, and it may seem a little confusing. The other thing to keep in mind is that Python is, instead of using braces, it is indentation. We'll get into this on Thursday, but it is indentation and it uses different code blocks depending on if you're in a function or an if statement. But you're thinking, what are if statements? What are functions? Don't worry. Basically, if statements help you make a decision, and functions help you to repeat blocks of code. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to type in a couple things, and let's say we don't know the type of a variable. Like let's say I type in, for example, let's see. I don't know. Let's say money equals 5, 0. But then I don't know what this 5.0 is. Is it a float or is it a double? I don't know what it is. And, who knows? So here's what we do. We type in type, left parenthesis, money. So it says less class, really? Less class float. So a float is another type of variable. It's actually a decimal point. Great. Okay, so you learned something today, didn't you? I hope so. So we've talked about floats. We've talked about strings. We've talked about integers. But let's do an example of an integer. Let's say age equals 24. That's how old I am. 2, 4. Great. We stored age as a variable, remember? Now, pop quiz. Comment down below. Tell me how you would print age to the screen. I'm waiting for you. Pause the video if you need to and look back at our previous code. How do you print something to the screen? Okay, if you said print age, you're indeed correct. So, here's the thing. We're going to do print, left parenthesis, right parenthesis. Oops. Uh-oh. I got myself into a loopy loop. Okay, so it's a dot, dot, dot. So I got that into something. So let me do, hold on. Print, left parenthesis. Uh-oh. Okay. See, 24. We got back to where we were at. See, errors can happen. I mistype things. You'll mistype things. Everybody mistypes. Or you may not know what you did wrong. Okay? So it's very important that you are aware of how to troubleshoot your errors. Okay, let's go ahead and do a little bit of an example here. And again, you're going to be actually putting all this together in a text editor with Visual Studio Code on Thursday. So it would be best advisable to watch the live stream tutorial that I'm going to be having. And if you follow me on Mastodon and other social medias, you will know exactly the time of that. So just an FYI, and if it's past that point, watch that tutorial. But we're going to be doing something called input today. And we're going to be taking input from a user. So watch this. If I do name equals input, left parenthesis, quotation mark, what is your name? Let's break that down for a second. Name is a variable. We already talked about that. Input is a function. But what is a function? Well, a function, like I was saying, is a repeated block of code. And each function can have parameters. But wait, that's confusing. Well, Python has a lot of built-in functions. So we're not defining our own functions yet. Python has a lot of built-in functions. And so what we're actually doing is we're using one of Python's built-in functions. And we're saying name equals input. Okay, great. Input is a function. It is surrounded by parentheses. And then we're saying left parenthesis, okay? And then we're saying quotation mark. What is your name? Question mark. Okay. So that is a function and it is used a ton. So let's demonstrate. Name equals input. Oops. I can't type. Hold on. Okay. Quotation mark. What is your name? Question mark. Right parentheses. What is your name, right? And then it prints it out. Okay, Taylor. See? So it just spit it back out to you. Now, if you're not familiar with the concept and you want to practice before you go on to a real file, this is a great way to do it. You know, if I didn't know how to do input and I'm just practicing, use this interactive shell. It's a really good way to practice. Now, let's say I am so confused and let's say that my boss gives me an assignment and oh boy, I just don't know how to figure it out. And maybe I need some help. Well, you're in luck. So, watch this. So let's do help, left parentheses, right parentheses. Okay. So this is the Python utility. Topics. Let's say if we do actually modules. But what's a module? A module is something that you can use in Python to extend its functionality. For example, you could add like a number module. And yes, we're going to be doing that for our calculator. And also, you guys are going to be writing code, and I will be looking at it. So stay tuned for details about programming labs if you're a member of the Arndt Tech community. But that's coming very soon. So you'll just have to wait and subscribe to find out more. Okay. So let's not get distracted. All right. Oops. Hold on. Okay. So if you got help on, for example, I don't know, variables, it could tell you what a variable is and all the different types. I recommend reading through the documentation. It may not be as helpful as my videos just because I think that the documentation may not be written well for some people, but it's worth another look. But really, the best way you can practice code is just to code. Code the practice, and then you'll understand it. I wouldn't recommend, just copying and pasting it. Code it by hand to understand how it works, and you can memorize it. Now, coding is not all about memorization, but you want to understand like the fundamentals. All right, everyone. I will see you guys tomorrow. And remember, Thursday is the Visual Studio Code tutorial live, so you don't want to miss that. And I will talk to you guys later. Have a wonderful night.